full transparency here, I was rooting for Renan Ferreira. I just thought of the two results that could have possibly happened. That was the funnier one. I had Renan Ferreira beating... I didn't have him beating Ngannou. I thought Ngannou would win, but... You can't blame me for rooting for Renan Ferreira, okay? The funniness of PFL just dying after paying Francis Ngannou $10 million. It was just too tempting, and the video opportunity of that, the title, the thumbnail, what I could talk about, just much more interesting than honestly Francis Ngannou winning here, which he did pretty easily in the first round. Took down Renan Ferreira. They started by trading some leg kicks, and Ngannou takes him down, ground and pounds him. Renan Ferreira had nothing for him. He's a tall dude with no ground game, no takedown defense, nothing of real substance here. Takes him down, ground and pound. And Ngannou wins, and then afterwards he starts crying because of his, his son passing away recently, and that was a moment that happened. He was sad about it. I was watching this on a live streaming, a stream with a chat in the corner, and the chat wasn't the most understanding of the situation, or the most serious when it came to how to deal, or you know what I mean? Like, you know what these kind of chats online, where you don't know who's typing in what go, you know what I mean? Anyway, it took me out of the moment because I was kind of just laughing at the chat because it was just funny. But, yeah, it was a good moment from Ngannou. His son passed away. It's quite sad. He got a win, wins the belt. That's PFL for you. And now they have other matchups for Ngannou, I think. Like Ante Deleye, I believe, is a fight that can happen with Ngannou. There really isn't much to talk about, honestly. Like, PFL has now successfully maintained their $10 million contract with Ngannou, because now he still has some name value and he's not just a scrub, and maybe people will tune in afterwards. The Saudi princes are more inclined to put in money for his next fight now that he's won against Renan Ferreira. But I'm more interested right now in seeing what the overall pay-per-view numbers are. You know what I mean? Like, how much did people pay and how many pay-per-views did this sell? Because it happened in Saudi Arabia, I believe, and it happened kind of early for a pay-per-view. Like, the main card started at 7 AM where I am. Usually UFC pay-per-views here started like 12 PM. So this was like 5 hours early. That probably affects the pay-per-view sales. I want to know how many pay-per-views they sold. I just want to know how many pay-per-views they sold. The overall event for PFL, it's a shame because there were some fun fights there. I watched some of them. I watched Chris Cyborg fight. I watched AJ McKee fight. Overall, though, it's a shame that PFL can't get any highlight-worthy finishes, because I'm guaranteeing you this now. No one really on the card is gonna go viral for anything they did. Cyborg won the fight, you know what I mean? Like, Cyborg beat Larissa, who beat Kayla Harrison, so she was like that next up-and-coming star. That if she beats Cyborg, she's like, okay, now she's been Kayla Harrison and Chris Cyborg, the two best women's fighters on the planet, and now, maybe she's the GOAT, or maybe she's the best women's fighter on the planet. But no, Cyborg won, and sadly for Cyborg, she got sparked out by Nunes, which means, just the weirdness of PFL. Like, it's hard to get excited for what's next for PFL, you know what I mean? Like, Ngannou's a champion, so obviously the next time Ngannou fights, like, I'll watch because he won, and I want to keep watching him fight in MMA until he loses, because that eventually happens to everyone. As he ages, he gets worse, his speed gets worse, his power will probably go away, his athleticism, explosiveness, everything just goes down a bit. But yeah, that was just PFL. Just kind of underwhelming, to be honest. Once the main event ended, I was like, thank God I didn't pay for that, because it lasted less than a round, which we kind of expected. We was just expecting a little bit more threat for Ngannou, I feel like. I feel like Renan Ferreira didn't really present this huge threat to Francis Ngannou where I ever thought he was going to be able to win. It was a round 1 KO. It was amazing. Ngannou looks great. The king is back. The headlines are out there. Then Hardy was commentating, Randy Couture, all the legends, huge card. Huge amount of money spent on the card. What does the PFL get back from this, though? You get to maintain Francis Ngannou on a $10 million contract, which is crazy still. There's no way this event made $10 million. Like, even enough to pay Francis Ngannou off, let alone the entire roster. Let's be honest here. Renan Ferreira is, he's done, right? Like, I mean, he can beat up some other fighters, but in the grand scheme of things, that's Renan Ferreira done. Like, out of our minds, he'll go from this point on. Once this video is uploaded and I'm done with it, bye-bye Renan Ferreira. My brain needs room to, like, remember more names of MMA fighters that are prospects coming up, like, they have hype behind them, or I feel like could be somebody that maybe the general population doesn't know about. So I don't really have room for Renan Ferreira, who's a good heavyweight, let's be honest here, but realistically, outside the UFC, this kind of just exposes the level of competition. I know he was doing the same thing to Curtis Blades, doing the same thing to Rosenstruik, doing the same thing to whoever else, Junior Dos Santos, who's retired now, I guess, or Cain Velasquez. He was doing that to a lot of different people. Stipe by the end, but Stipe was far more competitive than Renan Ferreira was. He got taken. Cyril Gane, didn't get ground and pounded out, got taken down, got up, threw in a heel hook here or there, won the first 2 rounds, In a 3-round fight, maybe Cyril Gane beats Ngannou. But yeah, the level of competition outside the UFC isn't the most high level, and it's hard to get excited for this stuff. I mean, back when the days of Pride, when there was an argument of who the best fighter on the planet is, with the light heavyweight division in Pride, the middleweight division in Pride with Wanderlei Silva, reigning supreme, Fedor Emelianenko being the greatest heavyweight of all time, still in my opinion, and at the time the best heavyweight on the planet. I thought those days are far behind us now. Like nowadays we have like a fighter here or there, like we have Vadim Nemkov, we have Francis Ngannou, I suppose technically, who's not a UFC fighter anymore. We have AJ McKee, Sam Hughes, I guess. Sam Hughes has got some hype behind him. Pitbull, I know back in the day. He's gotten a bit older now though, has taken a few losses. Just depressing. I mean, not depressing because it's the PFL, who cares? We'll go back to the UFC, but the UFC had a terrible card today as well. The entire prelims of the UFC card was just an advertisement to go watch the PFL. That's what the prelims of the UFC Fight Night was tonight. And then the main card, if by any chance you stuck around for the main card, immediately they wanted you gone. They didn't want you watching this. And that card was just a terrible card as well. This was a much better card in contrast, but it's still like you'd rather see Kyler Phillips on the come up than you'd see a PFL Johnny Eblen title defense, unfortunately. Even if you're a hardcore fan and you're telling me, oh no, I would rather watch the PFL, you wouldn't though. Like, it's just because Ngannou's in the main event. Take him out of it and you're not tuning into this stuff. Be honest. Good for PFL, they survived for now. It's only a matter of time till they implode completely and utterly. I want to see what the pay-per-view numbers of this are. Because I don't think this was a PFL promotion event. And that's weird to say because it had the PFL logo. It was by PFL, Battle of the Giants. That was the big tagline. But it was really the Francis Ngannou show. Like, those Saudi princes, they're paying money for Francis Ngannou. They're not paying money for the PFL. Like, Dana White realized a long time ago that the fighters, while they are a major factor of the pay-per-view sales, overall you're going to a UFC event. You're not going to a Conor McGregor event. Even Conor McGregor. You're going to see Conor McGregor by going to a UFC event. To most people, that's a weird wording and maybe you don't understand what I'm trying to say here, but like if Conor McGregor left the UFC and he went to the PFL, is he doing 1 million pay-per-view buys? Because I really don't think he is. And that's Conor McGregor, one of the biggest stars, the biggest star of all time in mixed martial arts and one of the biggest combat sporting stars ever to ever live. His name value, the amount of pay-per-views he sells, I don't think he does those numbers in PFL. I don't think it's the Conor McGregor show. It's the Conor McGregor show promoted by the UFC. This was the Francis Ngannou show promoted by Saudi Arabia. The PFL was almost like a secondary thing. Like, I was seeing Dan Hardy, Randy Couture, like these legends, and I was just like, okay, so these are the former UFC workers, and now they've gone to PFL because UFC doesn't want them anymore. So PFL will obviously take them. They'll take anything that UFC throws away. Maybe I've trashed on the PFL too much considering this is just a breakdown of the fight, but there's not much to break down here. I mean, Francis Ngannou and Tay Dillier, that's the next fight. Renan Ferreira, fight Rain Bader again, knock him out. I don't know I'm not sure who's in the PFL. That's a big heavyweight name for you. I just don't. Maybe you can do a cross promotion with ONE FC, but I don't think they'll even want to do this. They have a good thing going in the Asian market. I don't think they want to risk going to the PFL and having the heavyweight champion lose to Renan Ferreira, who just lost to Ngannou. It's just a big mess right now. I want to see Ngannou back in the UFC. Like, I know Ngannou's not worth the $10 million that he's being paid for this PFL event, because there's no way this PFL event does $10 million by it. Not to forget the amount of good fights they had on this card. It's probably a pretty expensive card to put together. Like, the owner said apparently it was going to be costing more than the Sphere, and then, which is like, what, $20 million? There's no way this card made $20 million. Renan Ferreira himself made $2 million, which is probably more realistic to how many pay-per-view sales this will do. Maybe enough for two. Not sure how much this was pay-per-view was for everyone, but yeah, that's the PFL for you. Not a lot of finishes, but the UFC didn't have a lot of finishes, so I'm not gonna shit on the PFL. But this is This is the International Fight Week. This is their UFC 300, you know? This is the biggest event they've ever done. The Battle of the Giants, Francis Ngannou, Renan Ferreira. And it felt like a Rosenstruik fight. You know, like if Ngannou got matched up with Rosenstruik, and that ended far more spectacularly than this fight. Which is maybe what you want here. At least it wasn't a boring snooze like the Lewis fight. The worst thing that could have happened was if it was a boring fight and then Ngannou loses by split decision, and then that's it. And then you have to make excuses. Oh wait, no, actually, Ngannou did win that fight. And then Ariel Helwani, you know, he'll go on his shows like, no, how could they do Ngannou like this and all that stuff. And then Dana White will be on the press conference. He'll be like, shitting on Ngannou, like Renan Ferreira. You know what Tom Aspinall would do to him. You know what John Jones would do to him. That would have been the worst case scenario if it was a boring fight. But right now, there's an argument to be made that Ngannou is the best heavyweight on the planet. And that's a fair argument to make. He might be. Just because John Jones did that to Cyril Gane and Ngannou went to a close fight with Cyril Gane doesn't mean the same thing would happen. Like, styles make fights. Nothing suggests to me that John Jones would easily ragdoll Ngannou like he did Cyril Gane. I think Ngannou showed that he had good takedown defense in the Stipe fight. And has some good offensive wrestling of his own like he just showed us today. And he showed us in the Cyril Gane fight. But what I'm trying to say is, this was like imagine Francis Ngannou and Rosenstruik happening. Like, they both decide the UFC's shit and they just leave it. Like, imagine they leave and then the PFL signs them both. They're like, oh, this is the fight the UFC was too scared to have. So we must have it. We must really find out who's better, Francis Ngannou or Rosenstruik. And then the fight happens the way it does, and then by the end of it, you're like, wow, what an event! You know, spectacular. Can't believe, worth the money. Even though it was only 20 seconds, how spectacular was that? It was completely worth the money. And it's just like, Renan Ferreira, maybe he could beat Tai Tuivasa. Maybe he could be competitive with Rosenstruik because of his size and maybe catches him. And anything's possible. I'm not saying Renan Ferreira couldn't be a top 10 heavyweight on the planet. That's what I'm trying to say here. But I'm just saying, like, there's a gap in the top of the division to the... You know? Like, there's a gap between Rosenstruik, Marston Tybura, Sergey Spivak, Tai Tuivasa. Like, that's... they're in their own category of... You know, like, they're in their own little league while you have the Cyril Ganes, the Alexander Volkovs, John Jones, Tom Aspinall. They're in their own league. Maybe even Pavlovich, but even... He got outstruck pretty bad. I think he'd beat Ferreira, though. Him with them as well. They're in their own league, and then they're on their league. And then whenever that league fights this league here, you get a mismatch, like a bad performance. Like Cyril Gane's has made a career out of destroying my right hand. You know what I mean? That was the PFL. Amazing job from Francis Ngannou. He keeps the PFL alive, keeps it afloat for now. They have a chance to get another big payday from the Saudi princes, and yeah, that was PFL. I probably won't watch the next PFL until Francis Ngannou fights again. That's just my honest opinion. That's what I think of the PFL. I will make a video when the numbers come out, if they come out, and how many pay-per-views this did. I think that's quite interesting. So, catch you guys next time. Like, share, and subscribe. I have 54 subscribers right now. Let's get me to 60, guys. Come on. I'll see you next time. Bye. Shout out PFL for staying alive.